All right, all right, all right. Welcome back to the Misfit Nation. If you are a veteran and you are struggling or feel like you are leading a path towards the darkness, stop and think about those who are around you. Think about how they truly value you, how they will miss you. You are not alone. You need to talk to someone. Someone will listen to you. If you feel like you'll be a burden to someone that's close to you or your family, or you're embarrassed to tell them what's going on in your head because you don't really know what it is, call the anonymous hotline at 1-800-273-8255 and press option 1. Don't make a permanent solution to a temporary problem. If you're a new listener, thanks for joining us. Please subscribe to our show on your favorite podcast apps, to include the Military Broadcast Radio app, and check out our family of shows there, all hosted by veterans. Great shows, great veterans. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel at _Misfit Nation. It's _Misfit Nation. Subscribe and click the bell. This will keep you up to date with our latest news, episodes, and of course, the stories of our guests. Speaking of which, our next guest is a native of Columbus, Ohio. He obtained his undergraduate degree from Marietta College and his Doctor of Medicine from the Ohio State University's College of Medicine. Following his internship, he joined the Navy and retired after 24 years of service with the rank of captain. His operational tours while on active duty included battalion surgeon for 3rd Battalion, 4th Marines, regimental surgeon with 9th Marines, medical officer USS Truxtun, CGN 35, fleet surgeon commander, 7th Fleet, command surgeon, U.S. Navy Forces Central Command, and fleet surgeon, U.S. PAC Fleet. He now resides with his wife in beautiful Honolulu, Hawaii. He's the author of the Defender series, and congratulations, your daughter is engaged. Now what? So without further ado, let's welcome Kenneth Andrus, Navy veteran, to the Misfit Nation. Welcome, Kenneth.
Thank you, Rich. This is really a kind of a fun opportunity. It's it's one of these things where it's like a lot of my career, just sort of kind of stumble into something. And so what am I doing here? I had a lot of those. I expect you had those too moments.
Oh, yes. So when I seen that you were with 3-4 Marines, I served with 2-4. I was attached to 2-4 in Ramadi, Iraq in 2003 and 4. So I learned from the Magnificent Bastards a lot of things, even though I was on the Army side, but I learned a lot from them.
Ah, great. Yeah, I said my time at 3-4 was really interesting. That was one of my backward stories of the military. So my stepbrother dropped out of college and decided to join the Army, and spent 2 tours in Nam, and came. And the second one was with the Special Forces. He was an advisor to the Vietnamese Airborne, and came back a little messed up. So I can go with your opening message. That was really strong, and I appreciate that. So anyway, so I said, well, I don't really want to get drafted in the Army, so I'll join the Navy. That sounds like a good idea. So what did they do? They sent me to the 3rd Marine Division. So I went to Vietnam anyway. So that didn't quite work out like I had planned. But I got the tail end of it, but it was just amazing because my battalion CO is a guy named Ed Godfrey, and Ed wound up being a 3-star in FMF PAC. So I learned a lot from him. And my battalion chaplain was a guy named Ed Krulak, and part of the Krulak clan, and his brother wound up being the commandant. And so then flash forward a few more months when we did the evacuation, and I was assigned to the 9th Marines, Marine Amphibious Brigade, and my boss was Al Gray, another commandant. So I really was immersed with those guys really fast, and my experiences with the Marines kind of stayed with me and kind of formed my other 23 years in the Navy. And so that was pretty darn, that was great. I really enjoyed most of my time with those guys. If I said I enjoyed all my time, I'd be lying. So
someone would definitely call you out on it.
Yeah, they would. They said, nah, you weren't with those guys. Well, after I got out of the Navy, I had a few years in private practice and couldn't stand it because it was essentially all about money mostly. Well, that's not entirely fair with the group I was with. So I wound up getting with 12 more years with the VA. And so that's what got me back to Hawaii. And I was at the VA Medical Center up at Tripler. And so that was old home week because both my daughters were born there and my first grandchild was born there. And so this darn state kept beckoning me, even though I grew up in Central Ohio. The moment I got married, my wife was saying like, nah, we're not doing 9 months of winter. Okay, so that took care of those plans, and so it was really great. And I kept my sanity while I was in the Navy, basically in more ways than one, actually, by alternating between hospital and fleet tours. So after my Marine tours, I spent time on the Truxtun, and she was a new cruiser. And that was really interesting. That was a fun experience. In fact, some of my stuff from that experience, and then of course, and Desert Storm and the Pac Fleet all went into the first book I wrote, Flashpoint, because you just you draw on what you know a little bit, and of course, if you write something like that, the folks that know what's going on, if you they'll call you out if you're just blowing smoke, and so I used to do that at the VA, because one of my guys came up and never spent any time in the military at all. And he said, "Are all these guys special forces?" So, no. And so I'd go in there and start talking to them. You could pretty much quick, tell which guys were kind of pulling the fast one on you. And
definitely, there's always the wool pullers in the military circles. So you gotta be sharp with all of them.
Yeah, but it was a great time, and I certainly can't regret the time. And the transitions are interesting too. So after I had the Navy, I was in my practice in Pensacola in the private practice, or a group. And some poor Air Force colonel came in. He'd been out of the Air Force, I guess, for about maybe 3 or 4 months. And he walked in, just this glazed look in his face. He says, "God, there's all these people out there and there's nobody in charge." I said, well, yeah, that's pretty much true. Welcome to your life outside the military. And so, we had our crazy moments, but you always knew there was always a support network somewhere. You may have realized it or not. And so that worked. And so even when I deployed Desert Storm, that was a 2-day notice on that deal. And so I wound up leaving my daughter's 5th birthday. This is after promising her, we'd be, there's no way I'm going to be gone this year like I was last year, because the ship's in dry dock. We're not going anywhere. Well, so they flooded the dry dock, put the old Blue Ridge underway, and took her down to Subic with all the Japanese workers on board. And there was a lot of on that one. And so we got down to Subic and got the work done mostly, and flew the Japanese shipyard guys back to Yokosuka, and then Admiral Moz, and just grabbed the command team and put us on a P3, and off we went. And so that was another thing. That was another of my moments. I saw a guy on my Facebook page here not too long ago, and they were cracking about how the P3s would fly around on just 3 engines. And I didn't know that. So about halfway there, I forget, middle of the Pacific, between the Philippines and God knows where, and Diego Garcia, actually. And I looked out the window and I said, "Oh, well, this can't be good." There's one of the props is out. I said, "Wonder how long we can fly on 3 of these." Anyway, that didn't make it into my books, but I probably should have.
I definitely should have. And most of the military aircraft, they fly by the seat of their pants, and you're happy you make it sometimes with the things that are leaking inside or the noises that they make, but they're built to last somehow. Like you said, 3 engines, 3 or 4 ain't bad, I guess.
Yeah, well, it's like the 46s. I don't know if they were probably all gone by the time you got in the Corps.
The CH-46s, yeah, I was in the Army attached to the Corps.
Oh yeah, so you got the Chinooks, but I go on these things. Even my son-in-law's 53s over in KB, I'd walk in there and I'd forgotten just how much oil and stuff was on the deck. Dang. So, but that was actually that did get in one of my first book about my hero got into a old Russian helicopter. He's got on there and he looked around and said, "Man, this thing's probably older than I am." He said, "Well, at least there's not any cans on the deck catching oil, so I guess that's a good sign." But
I met crew chiefs that said if it's not leaking, then I wouldn't fly it. So
yeah. Well, yeah, that's probably a more positive way of looking at it. It's like was another Marine moment. I was contemplating, rappelling out of the hellhole of 46. And then Gunny looked at me and says, "Hey, Doc," I said, "why you want to jump out of a perfectly good helicopter?" I said, "Well, that makes sense." We're not going to do this.
Exactly.
Oh, gracious.
So how long after you transitioned out did you start writing, or were you writing while you were in?
Well, I started thinking about it way back in, well, I guess I was at Nav Cent, and I was sitting down there, going through the message trapping and stuff, and looking at some of the TV programs, and had to do some interviews. And I said, "Man, these folks reporting to us, they don't have a clue. I mean, they have, they just," which was good. So there's a reason that stuff is secret. We don't tell us anything. Well, yeah. Any rate, so I got to thinking about that, and I said, Jesus, people just, and especially, and then they just have no idea what the command decision processes were, from the command authority at the White House all the way down to the, to the grunt that has to execute the mission. And so there's just this giant disconnect of both sides, of the guys trying to make the decision makers and then the guys who are executing, and with just no understanding. And that's why I always kind of run about you guys, because, we're in and out, at least the Desert Storm, we're in and out of there pretty fast. But man, the long hauls, those long deployments, I mean, that was such an alien environment to be in. And I mean, just like, how do you grasp hold of this thing? So looking around like, dang, And so anyways, that was part of the genesis. I'm like, maybe I ought to, tell somebody about what the heck goes on in the background of this stuff. And of course, the problem with that was I was creating a story, but I really wasn't concentrating so much on the characters. And so that was one of those lessons learned. Somebody has no clue how to write a book and says, "Oh, I'm going to write a book." Well, that was interesting. Fortunately, I did a little better job of being a doctor. I was "Hey, how do I do this?" Although there were moments I was with the Marines and on my ship, I said, like, "Well, crap, now what?" But at any rate, so then I fast forward to that, and then I was sitting at my desk at Pac Fleet, again, going through the message traffic and the message boards, and here's all this stuff on the South China Sea, and I'm sitting there like, most folks would be really hard pressed to tell you where the South China Sea was. Like, "Oh, it's the south of China?" Well, yeah, sort of. And all the stuff going on there. And so they have no idea of the flashpoint, all the stuff. And so I started writing notes down and everything, and actually started, writing ideas for chapter headings down and kind of getting the characters and stuff. How do I weed this stuff in? And so finally, when I was done with the draft, I showed it to my boss, who had just retired. He'd the 4-star, and Zap had just got back from Korea, and he says, "God, we were just talking about all this stuff." I said, "How'd you get a hold of the Chinese game plan?" And so I said, "Well, I don't know. I just, it's one of those things. If you're a staff wonk like I did, if you're doing things right, you just kind of keep your mouth shut and listen and learn." And so even prior to that, on my first tour in Hawaii, I was lucky that, again, unbeknownst to me, I was assigned as the ADU to Sink Pack. And so every time the boss, the 4-star would fly over to the Pacific, he'd drag me along. And so that was Admiral J.T. Long, who was a turret captain on the USS Colorado in World War II.
Oh.
And so that was Admiral Long, and he was just a remarkable guy. He was a submariner, and he finally made the submarines. He actually, in the start of, when he was in the Colorado, he went to the skipper, and of course at that time, a CEO of a battleship was just God. And he told him, he said, I want to transfer to submarines." The CEO looked at him and just threw him out. So, "Get the hell out of here, Long," which was actually a good thing. So the sub he was going to transfer to was one of the ones that was lost at sea during the war.
Wow.
And anyway, so he made it through the war and all this other kind of stuff. And then the other guy, of course, was who followed him along was Bill Crow. And of course, he got quite a name for himself over his career, but just, watching how those guys think and how they did business was, and then of course my bosses at during the Gulf War, same thing, especially Moz, and then following on my Emma Arthur. And well, they had some really knockdown drag outs with Schwarzkopf and all sorts of stuff. And I'm sort of sitting there like, holy cow. I mean, these guys are playing some hardball. The thing was being, we were drafting up the op plans. And so, just watching how it went. So that kind of drove me into doing this thing with that. And then the second book I wrote, I always had this crazy idea of why don't I just write this book about some crazy Chechen who's running around setting off dirty bombs? And so, and of course, Chechens are a little nuts, seems. But so my guy, the character in that and this is actually titled The Fifth Bomb, because that's when they had enough nuclear material stolen to make 5 bombs. And then it was retitled Amber Dawn, which was his code name for the op. And but the genesis for that, and you can see this a little bit in Ukraine right now, is he was a good guy doing all the right stuff. And then he was in Paris getting his PhD. The Russians sent him there. And then that's when they invaded Chechnya, and they flattened Grozny. They're doing what they do now. They went in the first time, got their butts kicked, pulled back, and just go the World War II way of operating and just flatten the place with artillery. So his wife and daughter were killed by a bunch of paramilitaries. So that kind of set him off. And so that's the genesis of my bad guy in the second book, is what drove him to do what he did. And so there's a little bit of empathy for this guy as you're going through the story. At least I hope so. And anyway, so that's, these stories just sort of kind of come to you. And like, where did that come from? Well, some weird screwed up brain. I'm not going to blame it on the brains, maybe. I don't know.
Definitely. Cross-pollination gets you.
Yeah.
I'm looking at your Amazon page right now. It has both titles, The Fifth Bomb and Amber Dawn.
Yeah.
The one for The Fifth Bomb says it's $1,051.01 for a paperback.
Yeah, that's a bargain. If somebody did that, that's it's like one of the few remaining copies. And if anybody wants to buy that one, I'm all for it.
I had to look twice. I thought my eyes were crossing.
Yeah.
So that's $1,000.
Yeah, that was interesting. So I did it, and then so I actually got a hold of somebody who knew what he was doing, my publisher, and he said, so American revised it and retitled it and re-released it. So the first 2, and then the third one that I put out in the Arctic Menace. And that was interesting because, again, going back to where do these stories come from? And that one one day I was reading something about, back in the days when we managed to sell off most of our rights to mining uranium. And I said, well, that wasn't very smart. So says me anyway. And so I said, well, what happens if I just made this story? I said, well, what happens if the Chinese are messing around off the coast of Alaska and stumble on a deposit of rare earth elements off the coast? And of course, geologically, that's not possible. At least I don't think. And anyway, so that was the genesis of the third novel. I've got the fourth one's in draft now, and that's more of a Gabriel Wan type of book. It's more of a spy thriller set in Prague. And I carry the same characters forward, so we'll see how that does. And anyway, so it's just sort of interesting. It kind of keeps me off the streets and out of my wife's hair mostly. I've got my man cave set up in the guest bedroom upstairs. And so periodically I get thrown out of my cave when we have company, but
We can sleep in a tent out back, I guess.
Yeah. Well, and now I keep rambling here. I guess the one book that's just totally out of character, the other ones, of course, is I think what maybe caught your attention is the one I wrote about my daughter's weddings.
Yes.
And so that was another like what moment? Because I have 2 daughters and no sons. And I used to kind of joke. I said, well, when the daughters get married, I'll probably be an emotional basket case. Well, I had no clue. My wife tried to tell me, but, it's like listening directions when you're driving. It's like, that's this exit. No, that one. I said, yeah, I got it. So anyway, so I was sitting around and I was knocked on my heels with wedding number 2. And then at least after that one, I had a better idea what was going to come down the pike on the second wedding. But so I started making some notes to myself saying like, dang. And so then I went online and I started looking around and it says, is there anything out there that really addresses the transitions that the father of the bride goes through? Dad, what happens to him? I mean, it's sort of literally the forgotten man in these things. It's obviously all about the bride, of course, and a little bit about the bridesmaids. Maybe the groom shows up at some point.
The wedding.
Yeah, the wedding. Yeah, and my wife had an interesting comment on that too. As I was putting this thing together, she said, the mother or bride doesn't do anything in the wedding. We just sit there. It's just you and our daughter up there. And I said, oh, that was one of those moments where the light went off, saying like, And but usually it's our daughters will spend all this, they'll obviously spend time thinking about a wedding and all that and things, but this is something guys generally don't talk about. We won't sit down in a bar and have a beer talking about a wedding. It's something we generally don't do. And again, it's our trace that we generally don't volunteer all this kind of stuff. It's just like, like, why would I want to talk about that? And so I went online and there really wasn't anything out there. There was stuff on, the father of the bride speech, things you want to say, don't do this. You don't want to embarrass your daughter. The toast, how to pick your song for the father-daughter dance and all this stuff, and maybe how to pay for the wedding. But nothing really got down in the weeds about what the hell's going on in the dad's mind. There's got this guy in the head of the aisle is going to take your little girl. Yeah, how do you deal with that? Anyway, so I sat down and started just kind of going stuff and doing some research on the mental health aspects of things. I was looking at transitions and those kind of things are kind of applicable. So for the guys, when your daughter gets married, you're generally maybe in your 40s, thereabouts, maybe 40, 45. And of course, a lot of stuff's going on with us in our 40s. That's one of those times in men's lives where things happen. You're looking over your shoulder like, dang, and you're starting to get some gray in the hair, or, the job is like, well, I'm doing okay, but I'm just bored out of my mind. Marriage is probably doing okay, but it's just one of those transition things. And so all that kind of stuff. And then you throw your daughter's wedding on top of that. And so I wound up throwing a little kind of a how-to guide together. It's kind of a short thing, and hopefully give a few points. Like one of the chapters is if all else fails, read the directions. And of course, the problem is there weren't any directions. So it's like getting your great complicated kit, and you're looking up there, and the directions are in German or French. Or Spanish, you're saying like, or there's a couple of bolts that aren't missing. I mean, it's all that kind of stuff that kind of comes up that you just got to deal with. And so you have a little of a how-to guide, and then I thought I'd throw that out there and see what happens. So
is that in a paperback form, or is that just in a Kindle right now?
It's Kindle, and there's a paperback out too. And so we're getting a re-release of thing. I finally got enough brains to get a publicist because I had no clue what I was doing. And so Sharon's guiding me through, and it's not real guiding me. It's sort of like, it's like grab me by the ear, just kind of pull me into this stuff. And so we thought, well, I said, why not? This thing is self-published. I said, well, there's no reason why I just can't go back and do not a remake of the book, but just get the thing out there with a little better idea what I'm doing. And if it works, great. If it doesn't, well, that's okay. It's really nothing lost, but nothing gained. And
as long as one dad picks it up and gets something out of it, that's a victory right there.
Yeah. Well, it is. I've had a few of the guys on Facebook, and one of the guys sort of after the fact, I said, yeah, I've gone through 3 of these weddings. Yeah, I can. I'd rather have a tooth pulled. And, but in our case, they turned out well. The girls were kind of tuned into what was going on, the poor old dad. And but again, it's like even in the morning of the wedding, we had a 1 o'clock, I guess it was a 1 o'clock wedding. So you wake up and say, what do you do with yourself all in the morning? I mean, the girls were all doing their stuff, and I wasn't about to go in there and drop in on my son-in-law. Hey, how you doing? How's it going? Not that was a non-starter. He was with all his, the second daughter with all his buddies from the squadron, and well, that was pretty cool. I mean, he did the the going through the arch of the swords and all that kind of stuff. So that was pretty cool. So we had all the so for that one anyway, I said, well, okay, I got all these Marines around me. That can't be all that bad. Maybe.
It'll get bad later.
Yeah, it depends.
Once the bar is open.
Yeah. Well, that brings you back to another. There we go. Retro Petroscope. This is back in 75 when I was at 3-4, 74 and 75. And we had a thing, it had its own mount-out box. It was called the Thunder Mug.
Oh, wow.
I don't know if that thing ever made it into the lore of 2-4 with the rest of the China Marines, but this thing came to being during Vietnam, and a proper officer was killed in action. And so they wanted to save his life. So they went on there, and as least I could understand it, they went off and stole a commode from the Air Force. Where else were you going to find a porcelain commode?
Exactly.
So anyway, so this thing wound up being the Thunderbug. So every Marine Corps birthday, we'd break this thing out and it'd go. And as I say, we had a mount-out box. So we had so when we pulled in the Subic, we happened to be in port, and for the Marine Corps birthday, and that was an amazing event. But then fast forward, when I was assigned, my wife and I were assigned to Naval Hospital Camp Lejeune, and that's when they folded their colors. And so 3-4 is deactivated. And I just happened to catch that in a clip somewhere. And I said, well, dang, I got to get out there and go to that. And sure enough, there's the Thunderbug. Oh, so meanwhile, at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, staggering back to the hospital, half in the bag, but had to make allowances.
No surgery today.
No. That's one of the things where I just closed my office door. The doctor is out.
Conference. It's good. I had one daughter, and my dad had 3 sons and a daughter. My sister did not get married, so I couldn't ask him for advice. I was the first one to get married. I was the youngest and the first one to get married. We eloped, so there was no big wedding. And then we did a Hollywood wedding about 5 years later on post, where we did the soldiers standing with us and everything. But we never had a big plan for it. We just did it just to say we had a Hollywood wedding. Then when my daughter got engaged, and her wedding was the last big party before COVID, so it was the end of 2019. It was the last huge party for us before the world shut down for a couple of years. So it was called an epic wedding. So I guess we did something right.
Oh, that's great. If you remember, it's like the 60s song. If you remember the 60s, you weren't there.
Right.
It's like one of those. So yeah, I think we've all been to some of the weddings that just kind of went off the rails, but
it gets a little crazy.
Yeah. But if you're sitting there and smiling, then you made it.
Yeah. And you're able to not be in the hospital the next day, not even just for work. You're just not there. That's good.
Yeah. So we had
So Ken, you have a publicist now. You actually, the first books are with a publisher, right? And then this is a self-published book.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, the second one is called Babylon Books, and it's a small operation, family operation. But I met the guy who ran the outfit as one of my writers conference breakout teachers. So that's where I met Bill, and he's actually knows what he's doing. He's I guess he's an ex-lawyer because he's not practicing anymore, but he writes all these legal thrillers and has done really well with it. But he's got quite a group of little writers he's kind of collected over the years, and that's been that was really been good too. He's kind of I was fortunate enough to kind of take you under your wing and kind of guide you through the process, and because I said some of the ideas I had an idea what I was doing. Say with the first 2 books I self-published, I went around, found somebody to do the cover art and all this, but goodness gracious, it's like anything else. It wound up somebody asked, I said, well, are you really, is this a hobby or are you actually going to do something with this? And I said, so it's actually having failed retirement a couple of times now. I guess it's more, it's turned into kind of a, it's more than a hobby. I can't say I let it totally drive me because I'm too old for that. I said, dang, I got other stuff I want to do. And so running is kind of fun, and it kind of keeps your brain active. And it's like one of those things when I was at when I start talking to folks who are aiming toward retirement, it's all this kind of stuff you gotta plan for. You just don't like, okay, I'm done. Now I'm out of here. And like, oh, I'm gonna just play golf. Okay, well, that's good for maybe a month. And then then you're sitting around like, now what? And so he was sitting there and in your chair, and your wife gets up. Hey, where are you going? So I'm going to the grocery. Oh, wait, I'll go with you. No, get away from me. And so, so there's some playing in this stuff to kind of keep yourself, mentally and physically active. And so I've got this exercise program while I run and still try to get the paddleboard out there in the ocean, and got a weight machine downstairs and off the garage and all that for the physical part. And then the mental part, just, doing stuff, writing and teaching myself French again. And well, French was in high school was a disaster. I mean, God, the only thing I remember from high school French is flirting with the girl behind me.
That's what I was going to say. The girl in front of you or behind you.
That was it. Well, the only reason I passed barely, I was on the track team, and the track coach came up and said, hey, Ken, said, you're failing French. And it said, if you fail French, you're off the track team. Oh, so dang, high school was a bit of a blur. I can remember studying once, I think. But so anyway, so it's one of those deals like, how I wound up where I wound up is just mystifies me.
You come out on the other side doing very well. You did very well throughout your career with the military, 24 years, I believe it was. And now you have your book series out there. You have the congratulations, your daughter's engaged. Now what? That's I'm sure it's going to be a good self-help thing it's in the self-help section, and it should help some dads get through that. I mean, I was 49 when my daughter got married, so I was writing about that sweet spot you were saying, 44 to 49. And I think it will help others. There was, like you said, there's no book out there unless you have a big family where there's a lot of daughters that got married before yours. There's no clues out there. And some of those dads wouldn't give you clues anyway. They're like, hey, figure it out. It's a minefield. Have fun and just go. But I think you did it the proper way. You got 2 daughters married, both of them doing well. You have your granddaughter too, and you live in paradise. So I think you're doing well. Thank you for taking some of your time to come on here. How does someone get in contact with you? I know you're trying to get more bookings for podcasts and stuff right now. Yeah. So how does someone get in contact with you to get you on their show?
Okay, well, I've got my publicist is Sharon Jennings. I'll have to get her thing up on the web. I actually got my website. I'll have to see if Sharon's actually got herself on there and give herself credit for all the work she's doing. But that's KennethAndrus.com is it's all one word. .com is probably the easiest. And then and of course I've got, the old trusty Facebook page, and that's Kenneth Andrus, 2 words, MD, and that's the Facebook part. And those are probably the 2 main things. And I was trying to think of some other stuff, and those are probably the main links in there right there. And I should have my whole list in front of me, but I figure if I got my list over here, I'd probably go and you'd be gone. That'd be
Wait.
And so I'm not touching the thing.
All right.
Like me and the remote control for the TV. Don't touch that. Okay.
Why am I watching Turkish TV now? All right.
Exactly right.
So, Ken, thanks for taking some of your time to join us on the Misfit Nation. Of course, share your story. It's a great story. I laughed a lot. I'm sure the audience will laugh as well. And thanks for sharing with the Misfit Nation.
Okay, thank you. And thanks to Misfit Nation. Yeah, I think you're doing some good work, and it's an interesting site out there. And you got that 13 steps right behind it. That's pretty cool. So, all right.
Thank you.
We'll sign off. Okay, guy. Thank you.